Let's get started on our second week of prompts for Dephemerember with Louisa Heinzel and 49 Dragonflies. Hi everyone, Patty here with my take on the prompts. We start off with the journaling card and beloved visitor. I wanted to try the technique that Louisa did with the textured paste and the stencil. She used textured paste and I don't have any, so I tried gel medium. And when I tried to put the second stencil over the top of the first, it didn't really seem to do it justice. In the end, I used the half of the page I did with just the fern stencil. I do think I'll give it a go when I get some texture paste. I do love to try new things, and I am adding the gel medium to matte photo paper, which I like to use like Louisa talks about in her videos. The way it accepts colors is really nice. I will be using my handmade inks in rust and copper to the stencil. But first I tried the more detailed stencil over the top of the bigger fern stencil with the gel medium. I can see the medallion stencil over the fern, but now I can't see the fern anymore. So I put the fern stencil back over the top so I could see the fern more. I didn't add more gel. I just wiped over it with the palette knife to remove some of the gel. This bottle is some of the vintage photo oxide re-inker that I put into a bottle and I add water and put into a spray bottle. I give it a good spray with that and then add my handmade inks of rust and copper. I will link in the description the video I did showing how to make your own handmade inks. I have my ink in ink daubers bottles and just drop some color in areas onto the stenciled photo paper. Now for the copper, which is a beautiful green color, and I just drop some color onto the fern into different areas. I plan on using my pups for my beloved visitor because they sit at my feet while I make junk journals. One day the little goldadoodle left the craft room with blue ink all over her back from me dropping something. I fussy cut around the pups from the digitals that Darcy from Darcy's Mixed Media made for me last year for Dephemerember. I love this digital set, and these pups just look like my two pups perfectly. I checked the scale of the pups into the journaling card and tried to figure out what more I can do to go around the pups onto the fern and not just have them floating there. A little piece of this dried canvas frays nicely, so I used it in a piece of dried cheesecloth. The label is from Fox Creative Nature Definition Labels, and it has the definition of a fern which worked perfectly for this page. On to the next prompt, altered pocket and textured fragments. I have a folder that I put all of my pieces into that I think that will work for pockets. So I went through this folder and picked out this birdhouse, a tag, and a piece of textured rust strip that I thought would look like a branch for my birdhouse to sit on. I added a little color to the tag from the excess that was sitting on the journaling card I had done for the previous prompt, plus a bit more with my copper and rust inks. That didn't give it enough texture. I found a page in my journal to add it to that was an existing belly band. I like the yellow tag that was in the belly band because it matches the film strip on the other page, but in the end I think I removed it. I layer the pieces and ink around the edges. Glue them down onto the existing belly band. I wanted a bit more texture fragments to this, so I added a piece of dyed cheesecloth just under the edge of the branch. I had to use my X-Acto knife to fit it up under the branch, being I had already glued it all down. Now for the stenciled tag with the bricks. I add a little more of my handmade inks and let this dry. I was happy with the way this turned out. Lots of textured fragments, and it's a pocket. Next prompt is least favorite ephemera and bookbinder's art. My least favorite is scraps. Yeah, I know in the Dephemerember song it talks about scraps. What does it say? Where we turn scraps into treasures. Well, I can't throw away a scrap because I could use it for another project, and they always seem to stack up, and I have way too many. So what better way to use up my scraps than to make a masterboard and make more ephemera? I go through my little container and decide to get out the bigger pieces. I dump them onto my table and start looking for pieces that will work in neutral colors. Not the thicker pieces that are painted from watercolor paper. I want all the same thickness of paper scraps. I'm using up this gel medium by putting a layer down onto a piece of paper. I find it you don't use it up. Some of these mediums, they just get hard, and I hate to waste this stuff. Gel medium has several uses in my crafting, such as using with the stencils and for gluing things down. I just start layering the strips and scraps to the page. Keep adding a little more gel medium to where it needs to have a bit more to adhere the scraps to the page. I have a tea bag I added that ripped and didn't work for another project, so I just kept layering pieces down. The leftover piece from making the film strip gets added. You get the picture. A bunch of scraps get used up, and I was feeling pretty good about this prompt. What do you do with all your scraps? Can you go throw them away, or do you hang on to them for another project? If you have any pieces that don't stay glued down, you can always add a layer of matte medium to the top of your masterboard. This helps the page when we cut it all up into ephemera pieces. Now to let this dry. I did add a little white gesso in a couple places with my palette knife and let that dry. And now I'm ready to cut it up into ephemera. I decide to cut a belly band 4 triangular pockets, and 3 journaling cards from this piece of 8.5 by 11-inch paper. You can sort of see my marks on the back side of the page. This is where I will make my cut lines. I have 8 new pieces of ephemera with my scraps. For the triangular pockets, I use my 1-inch hole punch and punch a little portion of the circle to the top of the pocket. I do this to all 4 triangular pockets. To add a little interest to these pieces, I put them through my embosser using different plates. Then I add a little gilding wax to them to give them a little color. Now to find a page to add a piece to and a little bookbinder's art. My bookbinder's piece is a piece of a spine from an old book along with the cheesecloth and a little clock charm. For week 2's prompt, we have bookmark and black and white. I have this bookmark that I painted and embossed a while ago, so I backed it onto a piece of white cardstock. The embossing plate I had used that has script had ripped the paper through in a couple of spots, so I needed to back it and make it stronger. This worked great, and now I can use my pocket. I trimmed it up and inked around the edges of my bookmark. Add a little gilding wax around the edges to help it pop just a bit more. Again, I go through my folder with pockets and find this piece I'd painted on canvas. It's black and white, so I used it. Now to find a page to add it to my journal. The page I picked out has stamps on it, and they all are black and white. This works perfectly for my theme. Glue around 3 edges to make a pocket, and glue to the journaling page. I tried a different bookmark I had painted, but went with the iris bud versus the thistle or some of the other bookmarks I auditioned for this pocket. It is kind of tall and you lose a lot of the bookmark, but I still like the way it turns out. Okay, we're done with week 2. On to week 3. Have fun!